talked at the Combine yesterday. Are the 49ers still all in on Trey Lance? We're going to discuss that and a lot more on today's Jack Hammer Show. Hey everybody, it is Wednesday afternoon, and this is a different time for me than usual. But I told you guys we're going to bring some new faces on the show, some new voices, means new times even. So 3 o'clock today on a Wednesday, perfect. And I got with me my good buddy Wayne Breezie. Wayne, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm finally recovering from the NFC Championship game, and I'm finally moving forward. And I'm getting ready for the NFL scouting combine. So it's time to get ready for that.
There you go, and it's perfect because I had you on. We worked together last year. You came on the channel during one of my roundtables during the offseason, and then I've been thinking about reaching out to different folks, and it just so happened we ended up in the same airport, the Philadelphia airport, after the NFC Championship game at 5:30 in the morning, on the same flight out, and it was just perfect timing for both of us.
Yeah, it was perfect timing, and it was so funny because we were sitting there. And you're on the opposite side of me, like on the other side, and I'm here. And there's just this one Philly fan just basking, like, we beeping one, and this is that and the third, and y'all, and I'm just like, oh, so it's too early for this, like so early. But it was really good bumping into you. We got a chance to chop it up, and I was on my way to the Senior Bowl, actually. So I was flying out to Alabama that morning. So it was just a tough morning. That's what that was.
Yeah, that was definitely a rough start to the day after a long night the night before. I haven't really had a chance to ask you this, but I know you're out on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. How did you become a 49ers fan on the East Coast?
Oh man, so the question. I mean, I promise you, my mom was a Dallas Cowboys fan, and I remember watching a football game with her, and I want to say it was the Niners and the Cowboys, and I just decided it's not that I didn't like my mom. I don't want to put this connotation out there. It's not that I didn't like my mom. It was just that I wanted to cheer for the opposite team that she was cheering for. And then I fell in love with the colors red and gold. Right? My son has given me a balloon he made, an art balloon. All right, thanks. Go. Looks like a balloon from Nightmare Before Christmas. And then, so it was like my mom was cheering for the Cowboys. I was cheering for the Niners. And ever since that moment, I was a 49er fan. It was early 80s. It was everything that I loved about it. And I've never turned my back ever since. I got a chance to watch a couple of Super Bowls, and unfortunately, I got a chance to watch us lose a couple of Super Bowls too. But yeah, hold on. Let me get my son out of the screen. Son. Go now. Thank you. All right, there we go.
Hey, got a special guest with us too.
Special guest, Rome, just comes down the steps out of nowhere. Didn't know he was on his way down here. I think his mom is in class. I think that's what's going on right now.
So. Yeah, no worries. Hey, it's funny because you're one of those kids. You're a guy who just wanted to be a little bit rebellious with mom. So that totally makes sense. That's not out of the ordinary. See that quite a bit.
And it's funny because during that game, I was texting my mom, "Hey, mom, I know, during the game we played Dallas in the game here in California. I was like, Mom, I love you, but for right now, we're not going to talk." And she says, "Don't worry, son. I understand. My team's going to beat your team." And I was like, okay. I just talked to my mom today. I feel like we just reached out to each other today. I haven't spoken to my mom since the divisional game round. Wow.
2 months later, we finally get around to checking in on each other.
She just reached out to me today to ask me about my son's birthday. I promise you, we take football to heart. We really do. I think to submit it.
That's awesome. That's an awesome story. Let's get into a little bit of the combine, but real quick before we do, I just want to shout out a couple of folks over here. We got Raphael 5629ers who
yes,
member of the Toolbox, Raphael's a great supporter of all the content creators, and he says, "What's up, Jack, Breezy, members of the Toolbox, and everyone." Raphael, good to have you on board.
I like that.
We also have another Toolbox member, Lucas. He says, "Hi, Jack," and then he says, "It's a nice time for me." Lucas is out all the way in Austria, so he's it's probably early evening over there right now, maybe getting into the later part of the night.
The future, so are they in the future? Like, it's
Yes,
fascinating to me to know that when you live in a different country far away, you're ahead, and that's so dope because I grew up on Back to the Future, and I'm just like, wow, they're really in the future. Like, this is it's amazing to me.
You guys are both in the future for me because you guys are, you're 3 hours in the future for me, and he's
right.
even further out there. It's usually morning when late beginning of the morning when he's watching the 49er games, especially the nighttime games. So great to have him. He says it's after midnight already. So
wow,
there we go. We got Andre Moore, also another member of the Toolbox, says hi all from Oz, which I'm not sure where that is. I'm thinking that might be
Kansas. I'm thinking say Oz. I'm thinking Wizard of Oz. And so it just immediately put me in Kansas. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that's a good one. That's a good guess. I was going to think Australia or somewhere like that, but maybe maybe it's Kansas. Well, hopefully he'll chime in and let us know where he's from. You got the East Coast Red and Gold podcast says, "What's up, Jack? And what's up, Wayne?" And I was right. I guessed it right.
You were right. Australia. All right.
Yeah, every once in a while, being an old fart helps you out with some of these kind of things. And then we got Steve Supremo who says, "Tip of the cap." So
tip of the cap.
Let's get into a little bit of the of what we had with the scouting combine yesterday. I was listening to what we were hearing from John Lynch and some of the different things there. But before we get into kind of what he said, I want to ask you this. Brock Purdy, from what John Lynch said yesterday, they're hoping that he's going to get together with Dr. Meister later on this week out in Arizona. If all goes well there, they're hoping to get that surgery done early next week. How do you think there's an impact on the 49ers of where they are right now with Brock Purdy and a potential delay if they do get delayed here again?
I think that's a great question because I love Brock Purdy. I love everything that he brought to this team, but I want the young man to get fixed. And so I already know that they ruled out the Tommy John surgery for now, but there's a possibility that creeps back up. And I want the faithful to know that there's a slim possibility that it might come back into fruition just because, last week we get the inflammation is not gone and they can't do the surgery. It's scheduled on February, I think 22nd, I think it was the date. And they couldn't do the surgery due to the inflammation. And so now he's going to go meet with Dr. Meister later this week, according to John Lynch. And then hopefully the surgery gets scheduled for next week. And we're hoping that inflammation is gone. But here's the thing. Let's say that it's not gone. And let's say he can't get the surgery. And now it's delayed again. I think Brock Purdy's season, I don't want to say it's over, but I think they give it a full timetable of just focusing on how to move forward without Brock Purdy and for 2023. And I think it'll probably be the right thing to do, right? So it's is Trey Lance healthy? If he's healthy, put your eggs in his basket, go get another quarterback and have your 3 quarterback roster. There's a possibility they draft a quarterback too, but I would much prefer them get some type of a savvy vet. I saw your tweet earlier and I thought I was being funny too, by the way, when I was like, they can get a ring, maybe. I don't know why they would want to come here and not go somewhere else where they can get more money and get, and have more playing time. But it can impact the 49ers to where the Niners, he brought such a breath of fresh air to this team. I mean, the wins continued. It was we started scoring touchdowns. We started scoring 30+ point games. It's gonna change. And so to me, if he's not healthy, it impacts the 49ers in a way to where we kind of got used to toward the end of the season when he came in. But I do feel like with Trey Lance in there, we'll get a different type of impact. So be ready for a new impact. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think I kind of messed up the question a little bit there because it's really about, if Brock Purdy gets the surgery, whether or not he gets the surgery next week, that kind of helps the 49ers determine which direction they're going to go, right?
Understood.
If he's if he gets that surgery done next Tuesday, and everything goes according to plan, and it's the inner brace that they're hoping for, that puts him back right around week 1.
Week 1.
You know, six months out.
With no off season though, right? Like with no, like he'll be able to be at the training camp, but he won't get any games played. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so that it kind of makes it weird. Like, do you just like how would the 49ers handle the situation? But it does make him ready and it makes him available, which is most important. So the fact that he would be able to play by week 1 in September, which is what the September 9th week, I forgot what the date is, but that starting that week is when football, I believe, starts. And then he'll have the green light to play. And if he had to go in, he'll be able to play with no hindering, you know. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because if he's able to play and he's able to go, I think that might have a little bit of impact on who they can bring in from a free agency standpoint. That's kind of what I'm thinking there. You know, the other part too, this is an interesting surgery, an interesting process, because from what I understand, around the 3-month mark, he's going to start to throw. So it's not like he's waiting until, you know, 6 months before he's throwing. And around that 3-month mark, he's going to start throwing. He's going to be ramping up. So around the time that training camp starts, he should be getting closer to being able to throw, you know, full speed and, you know, everything that he wants to do.
Correct. Yep.
You know, he won't be able. He won't be cleared. He might not be cleared to take the reps, but he should be able to get all the work in on the side field. You know, kind of like what we saw with Jimmy Garoppolo last year, I would think, something along those lines. Because unless he's completely cleared, he can't practice with the team.
Correct. And that's my thing on it. If he's not cleared to practice, would that hinder him coming back? You know, week 1 if he didn't get any reps with the ones. I think that's kind of where I was alluding to. But you're right. He will be able to throw, which is a great thing. So come July, when training camp starts, he'll be out there throwing for sure.
Yeah. And my only comeback with that is he didn't really have any reps with the starters last year when he stepped into the lineup against Miami, right? He really hadn't gotten any reps with them then, and he was able to come in and do fine. So we'll see. I mean, it's all a question mark.
But he did get to practice. So, like, you get what I'm saying? So, like, he still got to throw with the 2s or the 3s or the 4, 5s, and 6s. Like, he still got a chance to practice. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. He would just be throwing until cleared, which is different.
And John Lynch kind of hinted at it. I've been hinting at it too. You just don't see UCL injuries very often in football. There's not there's not much data there when it comes to football players.
Correct.
And there's a couple, you know, you can find a couple of bad ones when it comes to this, and you can find some really good ones too. I mean, if you're more of the optimistic type, you look and you say, well, look at Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins was cleared after 5 months. When he didn't have a complete tear, but he had the inner brace surgery done after his injury against Dallas, and he was back 5 months later, signing the contract with Minnesota. You look at the quarterback out in Carolina who took them to the Super Bowl against the Patriots, and I'm missing on his name right now.
Was it?
What's that?
Was it Delhomme?
Yeah, Jake Delhomme. So Jake Delhomme, you know, he ends up having to get the full. He had the full Tommy John. You know, and
I know that.
And, you know, he was back 7 months after getting full Tommy John.
You're right. But see, he also had the full Tommy John. But so it differs for the person. There's no, like you said, there's no real good data because it's a baseball injury. The injury is usually due to wear and tear, right? And so this is due to contact, which makes it a little bit different. So there's a great possibility, Jack, that he comes back just as healthy and even better. Like we, you know what I mean? But then there's also that slight possibility that he may need more time to develop. And I think what's making us, or at least myself, making me question the situation a little bit differently is because of the inflammation. And why is it still inflamed? You just told me 2 months ago. This is 2 months ago. Since a month ago from the NFC Championship. This is a long time ago. And so I'm wondering why would it still be inflamed if he's been resting, icing, you know, that elevating, compressing, you know, rice, whatever you do. I remember that from school. But it's just weird. It's super awkward, you know, for him to still have the swelling this late.
It is. And so we'll see how it goes, which direction it plays out for him. Even John Lynch said yesterday, that the main thing here is for him to get healthy. I think it depends on what side of the fan base you're on. Let's just be real. There's a Trey Lance faction. There's a anti-Trey Lance faction. Yeah. There's a, and it's, I think Brock Purdy just kind of gets caught in the middle of it,
Yeah, I agree.
And it's depending on what side of that you're on. I think sometimes you lean to one or the other in terms of the positivity or the negativity. We'll see. And I just, for him, I agree with you. I hope he's completely healthy. For me, the way that I look at this is, if he's not able to come back, and you kind of started answering this question earlier, if he is back, let's say he gets the surgery next week. Mm-hmm. There's an impact here, I think, of what they can do, because I don't think, you look at the names on the free agent market, and we kind of touched on it a little bit. But does a guy like Jacoby Brissett want to come to the 49ers and be QB3, especially in a league where there's so many teams that need quarterbacks, where they can go and fill a role outside of being the third guy on the depth chart? I think that's where my biggest question mark with this whole thing comes from.
That's a great question mark, because when you look at some of those names, like all of those guys are like potential starters. Maybe a Case Keenum would suffice, or a Nate Sudfeld. Nobody wants him back. I just feel like a Nate Sudfeld makes sense because he was here. He knows the system. He can probably be cheap, and he'll come in and compete. But I think he understands what his role will be. I mean, I prefer like a Marcus Mariota type, or a Taylor Heineke type, because I want us to have like the best available third option, just in case something goes wrong. Yeah. But listen, I think I understand where you were coming from. I was being facetious and funny on your Twitter when you asked. I was just like, hey, maybe those older guys just want to get a ring, man, and just call it a day. Maybe they're ready to ride off into the sunset like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and just call it a day. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I got it. I got where you were coming from there. It's just an interesting question that has kind of been rattling around in my head, and I think the 49ers are up against it right now. They need a decision one way or another on where Purdy is, to kind of help them decide what they're going to do. And that's kind of where that question's coming from.
I think it's a genius question too, because how does Purdy's injury impact the 49ers? I get it now. I mean, it took us a minute for me to go around everything, but it makes perfect sense, because what are they going to do in the quarterback room? What would they do? And that's why John Lynch hinted that there's a possibility that they'll be looking into the quarterback market, right? And so the question is, who will that quarterback be? And we'll just have to wait to see. But I think it depends on the Brock Purdy situation.
Yeah, and there are those veteran options out there, and Lynch did mention that they're going to need. That wasn't much of a surprise. I felt like it was pretty clear that they were going to have to go out and sign somebody. Right? You only have Brock Purdy and Trey Lance under contract. You
Correct.
Typically like to have at least 3 guys throughout training camp. To me, it wasn't a surprise to hear him say that we're going to bring somebody in to insulate ourselves. That wasn't a surprise to me. And so I guess the only question is, it goes back to the Brock Purdy thing. If they need to get an answer, he talked about need for time. I think part of his time was the reps were Purdy, but the other part is time for him to know what he's going to do.
Correct. I agree.
And you start to look around, and there's some different options out there, but they're definitely going to insulate themselves. And I think that goes beyond. We're focusing right now on the veterans, and we're focusing on free agency because that's what's next on the calendar. I think you're going to see them make a move around the draft as well. I think it makes sense to draft a quarterback as well.
I agree. And it'll be like almost the same situation that they were in last year, right? So they had, Brock Purdy. I mean, they drafted Brock Purdy. They ended up signing Jimmy Garoppolo. They had Nate Sudfeld, which was getting guaranteed money. And so and Trey Lance was your starting quarterback. And so it was Trey. It was supposed to be Trey, Jimmy, and Nate. And then they ended up drafting Brock Purdy in the draft. And then I think Brock Purdy just beat out Nate Sudfeld. I think that's just kind of what it was, right? And so Nate got the bye-bye. And I know a lot of people are like, please don't bring Sudfeld back. Listen, I don't expect our third quarterback to play football for the 49ers, but God knows if they have to come in the game, they won't be shaking in their boots. and I won't mention any names. And that was what we saw at that game. I'm sorry.
No, it was, and that's why I know that CJ Beathard re-signed with Jacksonville. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be upset if it's Nick Mullins. I mean, Nick Mullins
too. Yeah,
he's not a guy that you want to go into battle with for 10 weeks or whatever. But in the situation that they ran into in Philadelphia, if you had Nick Mullins, you as your quarterback, you'd feel pretty good about it, I think.
I agree with that, Jack, because watch Nick Mullins, come in a game and be able to win a game, be able to keep the game alive, win a game. We watched him start and win a game, and then we watched him lose a lot of games, right? And so he's just not a starting quarterback. There's a difference between starting quarterbacks and backup quarterbacks and third string quarterbacks. There's really a difference. There's a reason why they're that. Now, I feel like I do actually like bringing the Nick Mullins back, another guy that knows the system. Just don't be surprised if it's those two guys. They're veterans now, and they can be and they'll be cheap.
I think it's. Sorry, I interrupted you. I think it's going to be some. I think it's going to be something like that. I think it's going to be a veteran guy that people aren't going to be excited about, but somebody who, when you really get into it and dig into it, it's somebody that can. That's a smart choice.
If you could pick the veteran, who would that veteran be? I'm curious to know. I would like Marcus Mariota, but who does Jack Hammer want?
Well, I go with a guy like I'm okay with Mariota. He's a guy who I think in the system with what the Friars do would be just fine. Again, the Friars just ran into a situation last year at the end of the year where they had a guy who just wasn't ready to go. He just wasn't prepared, even though he'd been around the block a lot. He'd never been in anything close to that situation. Mariota's at least been in big games. During his time, he's been a starter, played a bunch. So, if it's a guy like Mariota, a guy like Mullins, to a different degree, a guy like John Wolford, who was with the Rams, would be a name that I'd be okay with. He's not going to come in. He's not a guy you're expecting to light it up or lead you down like what Purdy did last year. But Wolford is a guy who stepped in week 17, I think it was, in 2020. Got a big win for them to get them into the playoffs and started the next week in the wild card round against Seattle. So, he's, again, not a guy that you want to have be your starting quarterback, but as your number 3, a guy that can come in and kind of just save the day for you if necessary. I think that'd be okay.
And I know this is your show, but it's really cool to talk to you. I'm not going to lie, because I'm going to ask you this hypothetical. Tom Brady picks up the phone. He calls John Lynch. He says, "Hey, man, I want to be a 49er."
Yeah, I love the question. If Tom Brady wants to come to the 49ers and they can make it work financially, then you're stupid to say no, right? To have Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, and Tom Brady as your 3, veteran type quarterbacks. That's you do that.
That's a room. That's a room. That's a room. Woo!
Yeah,
I'm with you. It's all business. It's like nothing personal. It's just like, you want all of your rooms to be the best room in the NFL, right? You want your quarterback room. And I thought that the 49ers had a great quarterback room. The moment that they were able to renegotiate a Jimmy Garoppolo deal, I'm like, oh, we got the best quarterback room here. And that was before Brock Purdy even beat out Nate Sudfeld. I was happy with Trey, Jimmy, and Nate. You know what I'm saying? I was like, oh, our room is going to be good. Like, this is going to be a great room. God forbid something happened. And when Trey went down, Jimmy came in. He had a great game against Seattle, struggled against Denver, and then picked it back up. And then he got hurt. And then there was no more Nate, and then it was Brock time. Like, so it was a great room.
It's funny because when you go back to when they signed Garoppolo and they brought him back, I think that was the general consensus around most people who followed the team was that, wow, the 49ers have a great quarterback room. They have the deepest quarterback room in the league. I don't think there's not a soul that would have thought that all 3 of those guys were going to get in the game and play the way that they did, though. But they insulated themselves well, and it got them all the way to the championship game. And you can argue the play call, you can argue, whatever you want. It was just at the end of the day, it's rotten luck, regardless of how you want to split it.
All right.
Real quick, I got a comment. I just got to pull this one up. Steve O Supremo says, "How Jack have no snow? I've been snowed in for 3 days. It's been cold. It's cold. Feels like it should be snowing, but it's been snowing all around where I am. I feel a little left out that I don't have any snow."
So it snowed in. Let me get this correct. It snowed in Northern Cal.
I'm in kind of like northern part of like Central California.
Got you.
And so it snowed all the mountains around me. Heck,
Wow, I bet that's
I
beautiful.
I typically go to the coast for some work stuff, and so even over that way, there's a lot of snow up in the mountains there. Heck, we had snow in Santa Cruz, which is on the beach. We had the boardwalk had a bunch of snow on it over the weekend. So it's been really cold, crazy weather in California in the last week and a half.
That's crazy. We just got snow here on the East Coast. We got about a foot of snow. And luckily it was warm like today, and some of it's already melting away. So we got lucky.
There you go. There you go. Perfect. And then really quick, I don't want to get off this quarterback thing because it's really driving the conversation with the 49ers right now.
That's
And
fine with me.
I got to ask you, are the 49ers still all in on Trey Lance? I heard the comments from Lynch yesterday, and there was just one little piece that kind of made you go, And I'm not sure if you know what part I'm talking about there.
This is why I love the 49er content creators and the writers and everybody, because everybody gives you a different perspective. See, from my body language and me watching John, I thought he was glowing about Trey Lance, but you tell me what you feel, because I'm sure I didn't pick up on it.
Well, it's in that question where they're asking him about Trey Lance and what's his biggest room for improvement. He's talking about how they moved up to get him, how they liked him, how they believe in him, how they thought he could be a really good pocket passer with that added ability of running. It's at the end of that, and he says the biggest challenge is the injuries.
Yes.
And how he's had some conversations with Trey, how he had injury history early in his career, and then he went through 8 years without one and all that kind of stuff. And then he says that's the biggest challenge. We have a team that's ready to go now.
Yes.
He has to get out there and play. Brock got that opportunity this year. He grabbed it. He did great things. And this is, I think, the part where everybody's questioning. We'll see at some point how we get Trey that opportunity, because we very much believe in who he is as a person, who is a quarterback. But I think it's that part where they say we'll see at some point how we get Trey that opportunity. I think that's what's getting people hung up here.
See, I feel like that they're all in, and it really is up to Trey Lance. So I feel like they're leaving it up to Trey. So it's like this. Listen, I believe in you. I believe in everything you can do. Do you believe in you? And so I think Trey has to go out there and just, do what he does best. Like, be himself, make the short passes, be accurate, show this, show that. And most importantly, Jack, stay healthy. But you know what? That's probably not going to come until football season, because he got injured running the ball. And so, like, at the end of the day, I feel like I believe that they're all in. I don't think that there was any side stuff with John. When John was talking about, and I was getting a lot of glowing, and when he started explaining why they drafted him, I was like, okay, it's time. And I think last year would have been his time. Unfortunately, he got injured on a running play that was probably setting up for some crazy deep play action passes later on in the game. And if you looked at what was setting Trey Lance up, it was stuff like that. And I believe Kyle Shanahan is going to continue to do it. Like I truly do. He's going to continue to use Trey in the ways he feel like is going to be best for success for his team. But I think they're all in on him. I think they're all in on Brock as well. I mean, you could be all in on both, but right now, guess what? Brock isn't healthy, and Brock has to get healthy too. And so he might not have, and Brock had a couple of injuries. I mean, only one took him out of the game, but he has to get healthy as well. So I think right now you go in with the healthiest quarterback, the healthiest option. I think they're all in on that. And if that doesn't work out for somewhat, then you result back to your backup, and that's what backups are for. I think they're all in, though, just to answer your question.
Yeah, I know it's an interesting one, because I do kind of, you just hear the discussions, you start to see some of the articles that are being written by other folks who are a little bit closer. I cover the team, I'm there on a regular basis, but I don't have the inroads within the organization that some of the people that have been around this team for a long period of time have. And so you hear what they're saying about it, and they're of the belief, and they're sounding like, the 49ers really want this to be Brock Purdy's team. That's kind of the direction that a lot of the coverage seems to be leaning. I don't know. I think that Brock Purdy should go into the offseason if he was healthy, right? I felt like if he was healthy, he should have gone into the offseason as the starter. But, with it being a competition where he has to still beat out Trey Lance, it's not something that would just be bestowed upon him, right? I thought there should be a competition. He'd be the starter. and so on. But that's not going to be the case. And Harold, I think he kind of mentions what you said. I'm kind of behind it as well. He says Trey Lance is in the driver's seat. It's all on him. He is quarterback one. If he doesn't perform, then he's going to be the backup. But I agree with this. I'm right there with this. Is that I think that this is the time to put up or shut up. Mm-hmm. If Trey Lance isn't the quarterback one throughout 2023, it's not because he hasn't had an opportunity to prove himself.
I wonder. My question though is how much time do we give Trey? Because we didn't give Brock a lot of time. He came in, he didn't need any time. He just came in and played, but he also played a lot of football prior to coming in and playing, where Trey Lance hasn't played any football basically. And so, do we give him? Should Trey be granted that grace period to play some freaking football? Like, right? Like to get like it's so tough because it's like, yeah, Trey, you need to come in because what this kid did in the 7th round, came in and took this team to the NFC Championship. So, is it NFC Championship or bust for Trey? Do we give him any grace? I feel like he deserves a little grace just because he needs to play as much football as he can. So, do we give him this whole season and then going into the next season really start assessing Trey Lance? Or does Trey Lance get assessed week 1, 2023, because this is year 3?
I think the way that the 49ers look at this position is when they make a decision on who their guy is, they're not going to just bounce around. I think that Kyle Shanahan knows that if he's going to start Trey Lance day one,
that's a good point.
He needs to run with Trey Lance until he can't do it anymore. And then when he makes a change, and say he makes the change, he goes to Brock Purdy. Well, then at that point, it's Brock Purdy's team, and he's going to run it until he can't do it anymore, and so on and so forth. He's been around the game long enough. He knows that you can't be bouncing around between quarterbacks. You've got to have a guy. You could try to do the 2 quarterback thing. He did it for a couple of weeks last year, about a week in the regular season, and gave it up. But it's just not the right way of doing it. You pick a guy, you stick with him, and I think if you start the season with Trey Lance as your QB1 because of his play, not because of injury, but because of his play, then he's your guy, and you live and die with him until. And that seems to be kind of the way that he goes about it. We haven't seen him be a guy that pulls the quarterbacks in other situations because of poor play, especially when it's a guy that he thinks is a long-term solution.
How many times were we asking for Coach Shanahan to put Trey Lance in the game his rookie season when Jimmy was hurt? And we knew Jimmy couldn't do this and Jimmy couldn't do that. And Kyle stuck to his guns, and Jimmy Garoppolo was the starting quarterback, and he was going to be the starting quarterback unless he physically just could not play. I think you're right. I'm hoping Kyle remains that type of person. So if Trey Lance gets the nod, let him be QB1. If Brock Purdy gets the nod, let him be QB1. He won't go back and forth. He dabbled with that dual quarterback thing, one game, and then he nicknamed that joint. He was like, nope, not going to do it. It's too confusing. And so I think you're 100% correct. You hit the nail on the head on that one.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to. I put this out in a tweet yesterday. It's a great time right now because we're 2 weeks away from free agency. So a lot of talk around free agency. You're going to have talk. It's going to be busy for about a month, couple of weeks, whatever. It's going to be hot and heavy when it first starts. There's going to be a lot of 49er fans are going to be upset because there's not going to be any big signings by the 49ers because that's just usually not the way they do it. So you're going to hear, wow, how did we miss on that guy? How do we miss on that guy? You're going to hear a lot of that. But it's going to be fun. And then you get into the draft, which is always interesting. And the 49ers have 10 picks. And how are they going to use all 10? Who are they going to get? All that kind of stuff. You get into that. And then, right after the draft is great for folks like me because we get to watch them on the field during the offseason, during day camp and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to this next little bit of time here because it's really going to be a fun part of the season, I think.
I agree with you, man. You're gonna have a blast out there. Once May comes, I'm not sure if they allow you guys to go to OTAs, but if so, have fun. Get the scoop on Trey. Trey's gonna get all the snaps. There can't be any Brock Purdy, so Trey will get all those reps. And I'm more excited just to see the other players out there and how they improve as well. So OTAs are always a fun times. Couple of weeks of football with the 49ers, and then training camp. They come back in July, and once that happens, if Trey Lance goes into camp hot, I guarantee you that's going to be great news. Now the question is, how much will they not like put that out there? I don't think Kyle Shanahan wants the world to know about Trey Lance. I feel like he wants to keep it a crazy secret, and I'm just like, no, Kyle. Like I think you should let Trey Lance just be Trey Lance. Let him loose, man. Let him get out there. Let him rip it. Let him test that defense. Trey's got to keep this defense number one. Keep him sharp. So we'll see. There's going to be a lot of good content coming out starting.
We'll see how it all works out. It's funny because you hear so many people talk about how different the offense is between the two. When you really look at it from the passing game standpoint, it's pretty much the same. The only difference really is the running part. That's the part that, and then even when you dig into the running part, it's not quite as skewed, I think, as it looks to the eye. You start to dig into it, and, there's a difference between a designed run like on a QB, like on a read option type of a play. That's a different type of a run than, for example, a quarterback draw. That's also a designed run, but a quarterback draw is a little bit easier for the quarterback to get down or not necessarily get into a heavy contact situation. You go back and watch a lot of his runs, like say against Arizona when he got hurt. A lot of those runs were QB draws and stuff like that, where he's running into the back of an offensive lineman and falling down. He's not really good. I know he got popped a couple of times really hard, and I know he ended up, hurt his knee, but I don't know exactly what point in the game that came on. So it's hard for me to really point. But I'm just saying, like, you look at what I'm saying, I guess, is there's just a lot of nuance to the type of running that they use with them. And so I mean, you let him play.
They're trying to get him to grasp the concept of read option. And what I try to explain to our faithful is that that's not how he played in college. So with the type of football he played in college was like really no read option. It was like play action pass, and everything was down the field. There was no dink and dunks. Like if the receivers weren't open, Trey could take off and run over everybody. Like that's what you got from North Dakota State football. I guess you could blame it on the division that they played in, the type of athletes he played against. But in the NFL, where guys are bigger, faster, stronger, and smarter, we don't incorporate that part in there. It's a little different. Now, I think Trey Lance is very capable, very smart quarterback. But with this read option, he's, in my opinion, from the small sample size that we saw, he's just struggling with it. And I think the only way he gets better at it, reading that defensive end, is the defensive end crashing, or is he going, what I'm saying? He's struggling with that. And I think he needs to practice on that if that's going to be the type of offense that Kyle Shanahan is looking to implement with more of a Trey Lance. You didn't see much read option. You didn't see any read option, I don't think, with Brock Purdy. It was bootlegs and rollouts and stuff like that. But I didn't see. Well, there was one, and I don't think he handed it off. It was he forgot to hand the ball off or something. Something happened.
I think I remember. I think there was like one, maybe a couple times. There was one time where it looked really bad, and I agree with you on the Trey Lance thing. Really quick, it's when you watch this film from North Dakota State, there wasn't a lot of read option. There was some stuff that kind of looked similar to it, though.
Similar,
like it would have been from, like, I think the game against Butler, his first start, and they're running that fly sweep zone, the fly sweep kind of stuff out of the shotgun, where he's faking it and then he's running it right up the gut, right? Which is something that the 49ers have implemented in their offense and stuff like that. But the straight up zone read, no, you're right. There really wasn't a whole lot of that in the offense at North Dakota.
So that's why I'm saying we just got to give him time to adjust, because you could see Kyle is trying to implement it, and then it's not Kyle's fault. It's Trey just is holding on to the ball, opposed to when he should hand it off. And then when he hands it off, he should take off and run. Like, it's simple. It's simple for us because we're watching it. But as the quarterback, I guarantee there's 100 things going in his head. So
no, it's hard. It's a fast. That's quarterback position is the toughest spot, But hey, you're also a professional, so it should be a little bit. It should be harder for us than it is for them. But I want to just shout out really quick, Bryant Culp, another member of the Toolbox, says Jack and Wayne. Let's go. It's great to have you on here, Bryant, and it was fun to get Wayne on here. So I had to get him on here. I know everybody loves him. You guys are like him way more than you do me, so I had to bring something on here.
No, it's not that. No, not at all.
So no, this is good stuff. We'll see what happens with Lance. We'll see what happens there. When you look at the 49ers and you look at them going into year two, what players do you think are set up to make that year two leap? You look at it for me. Like I'm talking about like a guy like Aaron Banks, right? He had that big leap in year 2. Diameter Lenore, I thought, was tremendous last year once they moved, especially when they moved him outside. He was very good on the outside. Struggled a little more started a little bit more in the slot than he did when he was outside. And then, everybody knows Talanoa Hufanga. The guy was an all-pro. What rookies from 2022 draft class do you think can maybe make that leap going into year 2?
That's going to be our second round pick, Drake Jackson. I feel like he's going to make that leap. He should be starting opposite Nick Bosa. He'll probably be replacing the Samson Ebukam role, right? And that's how he's going to be utilized. I do need to see him get better in his containment skills when it comes to playing on the outside, not just blowing past the guy, making sure you're there just in case there's a run or that quarterback wants to take off to the outside. Thing I like about Drake, though, is his just freakish abilities. He can get his arms in the air. He has very long arms. His wingspan is crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers look at a couple of players in this upcoming draft that have some, freakish, outlandish, attributes to their game. But I think Drake Jackson takes that leap. And I think Samuel Womack takes that leap. I don't want to say that Spencer Burford is going to take the leap because I just feel like he's already there, man. The dude started as a rookie. He can get better for sure, but I feel like, man, he's going to be chiseled and fine. But I'm talking about Womack's going to come in. I think he becomes our nickelback, and he takes a leap. And I think Drake Jackson takes a leap. I know a lot of people want to see Danny Gray. I think that depends on if Trey Lance is the guy. I do think Danny Gray, if he can learn the route tree, learn how to get open, make sure he's blocking. I love seeing him on special teams toward the end of the season. He looked amazing. He was fast. He was flying down the field. He was tackling. I didn't even know he tackled. So Danny Gray can also take the leap on the offensive side. So those 3 players right there, to me, would be the guys I'm looking forward to.
I think that's a really good list. Drake Jackson, obviously, that's the number 1 guy. That's what kind of drove my whole question there, was because Drake Jackson, a USC guy, Talanoa Hufanga, a USC guy. Can you get the USC guy in year 2 making that big jump, for that second time in a row, right? That's kind of what I was thinking, because you really need that guy opposite of Nick Bosa. You look at just think about this, just to step back for a second. One of the things you keep hearing is how the 49ers need to add a defensive lineman. They need to add a defensive end. They need to add a right tackle. They got a right tackle. They got a defensive end. They've got a defensive tackle. The only thing that they really don't have right now that, is a safety that's a younger guy that you haven't seen, right? George Odom, what he is, but they don't have a second young safety. That's really the only spot that you look at this roster and you're like, that's where they don't have a second guy, or like that starter guy, right? That can step up into it. I know Odom started, but not for a full season. So
he's not sure. You know how we talked about backup quarterbacks? That's George Odom's role as the safety. He can get you a couple of games and he's going to be lights out, and then he's just not a starting safety. He can play safeties. Big difference. It's not a shot at him. He's really great at what he does, especially on special teams. He's an all-pro special team player, right? But as a safety, he'll give you a game that's really good, and then all of a sudden he comes back, sort of like Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles at the linebacker spot, who's probably gonna take the Azeez Al-Shaair spot, and we're not talking about that. So that's how I feel about Odom. So you might be right. I didn't think about it like that, Jack. I know we got tackles. I don't feel like we have a center, but if you feel like we got a center that we're grooming, is it going to be Nick Zakelj? Is it going to? I don't know. I feel like that's where we're missing, and I do think, Jack, if we spend money in free agency, it's on a center. I hate to say it, but I think that's what we do.
If they. I'm not sold on them not bringing Jake Brendel back. I just have a feeling that Brendel's.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like they got to get it.
Yeah, I kind of think he's the guy that comes back. I think Jake Brendel's the guy, because I don't think he's going to be, that expensive. That much. Yeah, he's going to be more expensive than he was last year. But
Jake, are you cool with him being 30 plus?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. The reason I'm okay with it is because there's not much, it's a young 30, right? There's not a lot of wear and tear on those tires, right? He'd only had 3 starts before last year, so it's not like he's taken a lot of pounding in the NFL. He's just kind of been one of those guys who's always just been kind of a solid background player that nobody's really ever thought to give a shot to.
He doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his tires. I like that. That's a good point. Great point.
So that's the only reason I think you can get a couple of years out of him, or bring him back for 2 years and have him start this year and then start to rotate somebody else in. I mean, that's a draftable position this year. Thinking that they're going to get another starting guy in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
That's a stretch, bro.
That seems to be what everybody's pointing to, right? But
there's no way they're going to get a starting center in rounds 4, 5. I mean, they would have to move up to round 3, and that's pushing it too. Listen, I think you go get the veteran center. Kyle Shanahan, when he finds a center that works, that's the center he likes to rock with, and he doesn't care about paying them. If you look at Weston Richburg, paid him. If you look at Alex Mack, paid him. If you look at Jake Brendel, he might be the next one on the docket. The only issue with Jake Brendel for me, Jack, and I know you watch film, is his run blocking. Yes. I don't know if that can improve. I'm hoping it can improve, because if that improves, our run game improves, and that was slacking this year. You could say it was due to injuries too, but to me, that's the weakness of a Jake Brendel. Pass blocking, he was phenomenal. He was a Pro Bowl alternate, no doubt. So there's a possibility that he comes back. As a matter of fact, I remember writing an article for WebZone, and I said that 49ers need to make Jake Brendel the center of attention.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because they don't move people off the ball. And that's not just Brendel. That's even the guy next to him in Banks and Burford. They just don't move people in the run game. They definitely were better in pass protection this year, but their run game, I agree with you. It lagged a little bit until they got that figured out with Christian McCaffrey, right? They kind of struggled there. So let me ask you this: as far as this year 2 leap, you mentioned Jackson, you mentioned Womack, you mentioned Gray. I agree with all three of you on that one. What about Ty Davis Price or JP Mason? Would you put one of those two in there where you think you might be able to see a little bit of a jump from them?
It's tough, man. I don't understand Kyle Shanahan when it comes to running backs, and he likes to go with his guy, right? And so his guy is CMC, and that's going to be his guy. And I think Elijah Mitchell is the number 2. Mm-hmm. And then after that, guys, TDP to me hurts the most because he doesn't play special teams. Jordan Mason will always get the nod over TDP being dressed because of his role on special teams. And so if you watch last season, that's why Mason was getting the nod. And then you started to see toward the end of the season, they gave TDP some love. This is not a shot at TDP, but if he comes into camp, Jack, and he beats out Elijah Mitchell, he could take that number 2 spot. And that's the key. Can he beat out Elijah Mitchell? He's healthier. I don't think he's much of an outside zone guy like Elijah Mitchell is. But if he can beat out Elijah Mitchell, give Elijah Mitchell a run for his money, I think that's the competition that you see. Jordan Mason will always have a role, undrafted guy, because he was needed on special teams, and you saw it too. So he can always play running back if something happened. So that's why he dresses the majority of the games.
Yeah, if I was going to pick one of those two guys, I would say that's going to be Jordan Mason, because I think Mason has all of the qualities that made Elijah Mitchell attractive in terms of running the ball. He's just a really good insight, really good runner. Yeah. Has really good vision. I think his vision's actually probably better than Elijah Mitchell. I think with JP Mason, it's one of those situations where Kyle Shanahan doesn't necessarily want to start guys right away. He kind of wants to make them work for it, kind of learn the system, and kind of so they know everything down pat. And I think with JP Mason, that's kind of his situation, is they just need to get him to where they feel comfortable with him in pass blocking situations. As the season rolled on, you saw them become more and more comfortable with him out there. You're starting to see him on the field in different spots.
We called him the closer, remember?
Yeah.
We started calling him the closer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the closer role was because you knew you were going to run the ball, so you didn't really have to worry about his pass protection, right? So you knew you were getting out there, put that guy in there, let him run. He's not going to not put the ball on the ground. There's a lot of things to like about it. But as the season progressed, you started to see him kind of move out of that role too. I mean, he still was in that role, but he kind of started to progress to earlier on in the games a little bit here and there. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to see it. I say if I was looking between Davis Price and Mason, I'd say Mason's going to be the guy that has a leap in year 2.
And that's crazy, because it's like, oh my gosh, we drafted a running back in the 3rd round, and it's a possibility that he might be let go. I don't know. 49ers usually keep 4 running backs. Maybe they don't bring in these veterans anymore. They got Elijah Mitchell can be considered a veteran now. You know what I'm saying? So it's a possibility that the 4 running backs will be those guys. The only thing is, and then you'll see some guys on practice. You'll see some veteran running backs on the practice squad because of the way the practice squad works. So you'll get to see some vets on the practice squad, but that's going to be really cool. I'm sorry, I'm a running back, and so I can't wait to watch that camp. I even want to draft a running back or two, or sign a running back if they don't go drafted. There's a kid out of Northwestern, Evan Hull. You want another kind of like Christian McCaffrey type of guy. Like that guy can do stuff, doesn't have that fast breakaway speed, but man, he can make you miss within that 10 yards. I pay attention to that 10-yard split. So there's a bunch of guys out there that may go undrafted just because of the way the draft falls, not because of their talent. 49ers might be looking on that undrafted chart again to bring some guys in.
I would think that they would. You always need to have bodies at that spot during training camp, and then you see where you go after that. If it's a rookie or a veteran, kind of like what they did this year on the practice squad side of it. Final Push says TDP supposed to be the best pass blocking running back in the draft last year. I will say this about Ty Davis Price: he was very impressive in training camp when it came to pass blocking one-on-ones.
Yes,
with Fred Warner and so on. So that was good. I think he's in line there. Luca the Don, I think, was asking if JP Mason has the burst like Mitchell. Yeah, he does. Like he's smooth, man. He's a really good blend of power and speed. I really like what
I don't think he has the same burst. I think it's different. It's different. If we talk about speed, the speed burst, he doesn't have that. If that's what he's talking about.
All right, we can agree to disagree.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I don't think he has that speed burst.
Okay,
but he has the vision, which kind of makes the speed burst. It's an illusion.
Got it.
Yeah,
I got it. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's kind of like how Brock Purdy doesn't have the big arm, but he can still make the downfield throws.
He can still make the downfield throw. Right. Everybody keeps saying he has a noodle arm, and I'm like, where? He just threw it 50 yards down the field, 40 yards down the field. Where's the noodle? So maybe he can't do it consistently, and no quarterback can do it consistently.
Nah, the noodle arm comes from one throw during rookie minicamp last year. That's what started the whole trend.
I hope I get to join you at rookie minicamp this year. I hope I can get out there for a day or two.
It would be fun. It'd be fun. J49 says, "Hey Jack, hello Wayne Breezie, cool. He's liking the show. Good stuff." Really quick, one last thing for you. I don't know if you heard this already, but apparently Nick Bosa was on the podcast with not Dion. There's the other former 49ers quarterback that played for another team, Richard Sherman. Yes, and he was talking about how good they are in the secondary, and he kind of dropped a little bit about Emmanuel Mosley coming back.
He did.
What are your thoughts there?
So it's funny because earlier today on my show, I was talking about how Diamador Lenore was the breakthrough player, and what if they don't bring Emmanuel Mosley back because they're all in on Demo Lenore, right? He's their number 2 guy. They'll go out and get some other guys or whatever, or they'll lowball him and make him an offer to where he doesn't want. But since now that Nick Bosa done spilled the beans and it's out there, and first of all, I want Emmanuel Mosley back. Let me make this clear. Number 2, I really believe Emmanuel Mosley was the best cornerback on the team last year until he got hurt. I know Mooney Ward was getting paid as the number 1, but Jack, they were testing Mosley, bro. They were testing him every single game, and he passed every test. And I'm like, yo, this kid is balling out. He's looking to get paid. It was a contract year. But guess what? He's going to be going into another contract year because I'm sure it's going to be one of those Jason Verrett 1 year, $1 million point something, one of those cheap veteran incentive-based deals. Or do you think the 49ers really are all in? He does have an injury history.
See, and that's the question. That's the problem, because I agree with you. When Emmanuel Mosley has been healthy, he's played at a very high level. But the only problem is, and I mean very high, like best of the quarterback high. But he just can't stay healthy, and that's the question mark. And so that's why if I'm the 49ers or any team really, and I think that's why he might come back to the 49ers. I just don't see a team offering him big money for multiple years at this point. He needs to show that he can play 15 games in a season. He hasn't done that since his first season of. Back in 2019 when he was primarily a special teams guy until the midpoint of the season when an injury put him into the starting lineup.
Good point. Good point. So hey, look, Nick dropped it. He dropped the nugget on it, and I'm glad. If he's gonna be back, I'm so glad. I'm glad. You're gonna have Mosley back. You're gonna have Mosley, Mooney. There's gonna be a battle. At that nickel spot. So now we're talking Womack versus Diamador Lenore again, and Diamador Lenore beat him last year. But Womack, don't he it's gonna be a battle. That's all I'm gonna say. And then on top of that, they get Steve Wilkes as the defensive coordinator, who specializes in what?
Exactly, in DBs. And so that's gonna I think one of the exciting parts about it is you gotta get, it's a little bit of a change because they've been really linebacker driven the last, since
I wonder
Kyle
why,
Shanahan took over, right? Right, exactly. And linebacker coaches all the way through. Now you got a DB coach, and so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's still going to be linebacker driven because those guys are so good, but it's going to be interesting to see if that defensive backfield, how they step up, and if there's a leap in their game overall.
Really well said, man. I'm excited. Yeah. Mosley should be back. Hopefully he'll be back. I'm praying that he comes back. I want Mosley back.
Yep, and like Jedi says, that's what you want, baby. Competition, and that's what is that another one of your guys?
That's my Jedi is a great person, man. That's exactly what we want. That is exactly what we want.
And that's what the 49ers are all built upon, right? That's why you look at the depth on this team, and there's competition at every level. And I think that's one of the reasons why Kyle Shanahan doesn't come out, even though he might think that player X is going to be a starting quarterback, for example. He doesn't say it right away because he wants these guys to really fight it out. Competition, what do they say? Iron sharpens
iron, brother. Yes, sir.
so that's where the 49ers are. This roster is stacked. I think the starting offense is only losing 2 guys from last season. Defense is only losing a couple. So you've got a lot of your top end talent still back, and you've got some really good depth behind them. Your draft from last year is looking to maybe, give you some support as well. It's going to be an interesting offseason. They don't pick until they have a few 3rd round picks or a couple of them, but that's at the end of the 3rd, which is really basically an early 4th when you look at the numbers. But hey, it's going to be 10 picks. From what I understand, it's a deep draft, and the 49ers can go on this, and maybe add a few guys. I don't think they're going to use all 10 picks, but I think they can definitely fill in some holes.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised though, Jack, if they used all 10. They used all of however many they had last year. They had more than 10 last year. They used them all, and those guys half of them aren't even with the team. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
It's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, like you said, though, if there's a player that they want and there's a player that they have an opportunity to go get, I mean, the only thing that sucks is they have to be all in on that player, and they got to hope that player is going to be available because they would have to give up thirds, a couple of thirds, maybe something in the next year just to move up. And I don't know if that's the smart move unless it's a player. There's a couple of safeties that I want though at the very beginning of this draft. If we end up with like a Sidney Brown out of Syracuse, I would be so fine. Like I would be fine. I feel like that's the guy you could come in. He'll play deep first year, but then he can interchange. You know what the 49ers like to do at safety? They interchange, and so you bring in, you try to re-sign to Sean Gibson. You bring in this young kid. I don't know. There's so many things they could do. Maybe for the first time ever, they address the safety position in the draft. Something that they don't do.
Maybe do it early, right? Do it earlier than the 5th because that's where they got.
That's where they got Talanoa Hufanga.
Yeah. Yep. And I like this one. Steve Supremo says we lost 11 coaches year before last year. That's part of why we have the slow starts. Hopefully this year better. If Jack is the boombox guy, that's right. Give me the boombox. I think I can carry that boombox. I think I can make it work.
You can carry the boombox. If you're gonna apply for it, listen, I will endorse you. All right, I will push it. I will put it out there on all the social medias, and we will get you that job.
Let's go, Jack, for the boombox guy. I think I can do that. We'll see. I think I can.
Jack in the box.
Oh, hey, call me a clown now? What are you? Come on, Wayne.
He's got the boombox. Oh man, wordplay, man, wordplay.
That's fantastic. No, I got you. That's fun. Always fun. Hey, man, it was great to have you on. I know we talked a little bit about trying to do this on a more regular basis, and I'd love to do it.
Yeah, let's do it, man. This was amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you, everybody out there, for watching. Make sure you guys hit that like button, #1. And don't forget, if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. And I see Jack can get members, so do him even a better favor. Support this man because he's out there working his behind off. Become a member of his channel today. Would you call yourself? The Toolbox?
Yeah, the Toolbox. That's because of the hammer.
I need you to give my crew a name. They joined, but I don't know. I just call them family. Give me something cool like the Toolbox. That's so fucking fire, bro. Like, come up with something. You're a writer. Figure it out. Let me know.
I'll come up with something, and I'll have the DM you something good here. Maybe give you a couple of things.
Hit something good. I like that. All right,
man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then real quick, why don't you plug your channel real quick?
Oh, guys, listen, I'm at the Wayne Breezie right here on YouTube, or at Wayne Breezie. So it's both of them. Remember, my old channel got hacked, which was at Wayne Breezie, so I had to add the in front of it. So do me a favor, man. I'm trying to creep up to Jack's level, man. I'm trying to get my subscribers up, and it's off-season, sweepstakes. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, please go do so. We do daily shows every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday early in the morning. It'll be 8 a.m. at your time. The Nitty Gritty Niners crew comes on that evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we have special guests on all throughout the week. So please go ahead and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, it's really easy. Think of, like, how when the guys from Ohio State, when they introduce them, they say where they're from, they say the Ohio State University. It's the same thing. It's the Wayne Breezie Show. Same thing. You got to emphasize that part.
Jack. That's exactly how it should be. You know what? Maybe I have to get you to do a soundbite. Tell me how much you can cost me to do a soundbite. The Wayne Breezie. I like that, man.
There you go. The Wayne Breezie extravaganza, or whatever, however you want to put the Wayne Breezie. You got to emphasize the part. That's whole key.
Yep. I hate when they do that too, Jack. I'm like, why the f do they say the Ohio State? It's just fucking Ohio State. You got to remember, I'm a Michigan fan, and so that's little stuff like that just pisses me off. The Ohio State. Like, there's another Ohio State. Like, come on.
I don't know. Maybe they're worried about Akron or Ohio taking over. I don't know.
Miami, Ohio. Remember that? I don't even know where that Ohio is. Is it in Miami? I don't know. It's somewhere in
no, I don't think there's. I think that the Miami of Ohio, it has something. It's a long this thing trying to describe what that's all about. So we'll leave that alone. But make sure you get over to Wayne's channel, the Wayne Breezie Show. Make sure you get over to there and subscribe there. And like Raphael 569 says here, before you leave, he does this all the time. He's great for me. He always wants to make sure everybody remembers to like and subscribe. I'll tell you this, whether it's Wayne channel or mine, the likes are the biggest thing for us. Subscriptions are cool. It's great to have you guys subscribe because that's how you don't miss us. But the likes are what drives the channels, because that's how we get it out in front of other people. The more likes these shows get, the more that it gets in front of other people, and the views is where it's all at for us, and the likes are what help drives the views. So
amen.
Get over to the Wayne Breezie Show. Make sure you're over there. Check him out every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like he said. Keep it locked in here to my channel as well, Inside the Fires with Jack Hammer. Keep it locked in. We're going to have 49ers news and updates all the way through, and appreciate everybody. Wayne, again, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you.
All right, man. Peace out.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Take care.